I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. For 40 years, the same magnolia tree had bloomed outside my kitchen window. I'd watched it grow from a sapling my husband James and I planted when we first bought this house in 1985. Now its branches stretched high enough to cast shadows on our second-floor bedroom. Our bedroom. Even after 3 years without him. I still thought of it that way. "More coffee, Karen?" Sarah Reynolds asked, refilling my cup before I could answer. My neighbor of 38 years had a habit of doing things for people whether they wanted it or not. Today, I was grateful for it. "Thanks. You know just when I need it," I said, watching steam rise from the dark liquid. Sunday afternoons had developed a familiar rhythm since James passed. Sarah would come over with pastries from the bakery downtown, and we'd sit in my sunroom, gossiping about the neighborhood and reminiscing about the days when our children played together on the connecting lawns between our houses. "Thomas called yesterday," I said, stirring a teaspoon of sugar into my coffee. "He and Jennifer are coming for dinner tonight. They're bringing some real estate agent with them." Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "A real estate agent? Did you ask them to—" I shook my head. "Jennifer said she's a friend who happened to be in town. Melissa something. And they just decided to bring her to family dinner. That seems odd." It did seem odd, but I'd learned to accept Jennifer's peculiarities over the years. My daughter-in-law had always been particular about appearances, connections, and social standing. In the 10 years she'd been married to my son, I'd watched her systematically remake Thomas into someone I barely recognized anymore. "It's fine," I said, though something in my stomach tightened. "The more the merrier." Sarah didn't look convinced. "Just be careful, Karen. You know how Jennifer can be." I did know. Jennifer Wilson was beautiful, ambitious, and calculating. She'd met Thomas at a charity fundraiser where she was working as an event coordinator. My son, who'd always been sensitive and somewhat shy, had fallen hard for her confidence and charm. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Within a year, married. And within 2 years, Thomas had changed jobs twice to accommodate Jennifer's career aspirations, moving from his beloved position teaching history at the local high school to a corporate training role that paid better but left him drained and distant. "She's just very driven," I said, the same defense I'd offered countless times. "Thomas loves her." Sarah hummed noncommittally. "And the dinner, what are you making? A pot roast? Thomas's favorite growing up." "Not Jennifer's favorite. I imagine—" I laughed despite myself. "Jennifer would prefer something with fewer calories and more Instagram potential." We fell into comfortable conversation about recipes and neighborhood news, but my mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. Something about this impromptu dinner with a real estate agent friend didn't sit right. By 6 o'clock, the house was filled with the rich aroma of pot roast, roasted potatoes, and fresh-baked rolls. I'd set the dining room table with my good china, not the expensive set James had bought me for our 25th anniversary that Jennifer had always admired, but the everyday set with the small blue flowers around the edges. The doorbell rang precisely at 6:30. Jennifer was nothing if not punctual. "Mom!" Thomas embraced me warmly, though he pulled away faster than he used to. At 38, my son still had his father's kind eyes, though his once athletic frame had softened around the middle. Jennifer air-kissed my cheek, the scent of her expensive perfume lingering. "Karen, the house smells homey." She handed me a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "This is Melissa Davis," Jennifer continued, gesturing to a sleek blonde woman in a tailored pantsuit. "She's one of the top real estate agents in the city." "Lovely to meet you," Melissa said, her handshake firm and professional. "Jennifer has told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope," I replied with a smile, though Jennifer's tight expression suggested otherwise. We settled in the dining room, where I'd spent countless hours feeding my family over the decades. Thomas immediately complimented the pot roast, while Jennifer picked at her food, moving it around her plate more than eating it. "So, Karen," Melissa said halfway through dinner, "Jennifer tells me you've been in this house for quite some time." 40 years this October, I confirmed. "James and I bought it when Thomas was just a baby. It's a wonderful neighborhood," Melissa nodded appreciatively. Properties here have appreciated significantly, especially the larger homes on corner lots like yours. Something in her tone made me pause with my fork midway to my mouth. Yes, we've been very fortunate. Mom, Jennifer interjected, setting down her barely touched glass of wine. Melissa specializes in helping seniors downsize to more manageable living situations. I felt my spine stiffen. I wasn't aware I needed help with that. Thomas cleared his throat. Mom, you're all alone in this big house. The stairs, the maintenance. It's a lot for someone your age. My age, I repeated, feeling a strange hollowness forming in my chest. I'm 63, Thomas, not 90. I manage just fine. But you don't have to, Jennifer said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. There are these lovely senior communities with beautiful apartments, activities, people your own age. I have friends my own age right here, I countered, thinking of Sarah and our Sunday coffees. And I'm quite active in the community. Karen, Melissa leaned forward, her voice taking on a practiced sympathetic tone. Many of my clients find tremendous relief in simplifying their lives, and the financial benefits can be substantial. This house could sell for at least $450,000 in today's market. The room seemed to tilt slightly. They hadn't come for a family dinner. They'd come to convince me to sell my home. I appreciate your professional assessment, I said carefully. But I have no interest in selling. Mom, Thomas's voice had an edge of frustration I rarely heard. You're not thinking clearly about this. The property taxes alone must be eating up your pension. I manage my finances just fine. Thomas, in truth, I did more than manage. James had been prudent with our savings and investments. The life insurance policy had paid off the remaining mortgage, and my own career as an accountant had provided a decent pension. I lived comfortably, if not extravagantly. But you could have so much more, Jennifer pressed. Travel, new experiences, freedom from all this. She waved her hand dismissively at my home, my life. I'm quite happy with all this, I replied, my voice cooler than intended. Now, who would like dessert? I made apple pie. Thomas's face brightened momentarily. Apple pie had always been his favorite, but Jennifer cut in before he could respond. Actually, we need to get going. Early meeting tomorrow. She stood abruptly. Melissa, thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry this wasn't more productive. Melissa gathered her purse with a professional smile. It was lovely meeting you. Karen, here's my card, in case you change your mind. I accepted it automatically, years of politeness overriding my desire to refuse. Thomas hung back as Jennifer and Melissa headed for the door. Mom, we're just worried about you, he said quietly. This house is too much for one person. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who now couldn't seem to see me clearly. Thomas, I raised you in this house. I buried your father while living in this house. I'm not leaving because Jennifer thinks it would be more convenient. His face hardened slightly. It's not just Jennifer. I worry too. Then worry less, I said gently. I'm fine. Thomas, really. He nodded, but something in his expression told me this conversation was far from over. After they left, I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the dishes and leftovers from a dinner that had turned into something unexpected and unsettling. For the first time since James died, I felt truly alone in the house we'd shared for nearly 4 decades. I picked up the real estate agent's card, running my thumb over the embossed lettering. Then I dropped it into the trash. The following Sunday, Sarah was running late for our usual coffee date. I'd just taken a batch of blueberry muffins from the oven when my phone rang. Karen, it's me. Sarah's voice sounded breathless. I just saw the strangest thing. Jennifer's car is parked at the end of your street, and she's sitting inside with that real estate woman from your dinner. My hand tightened around the phone. They're just sitting in her car outside my house. Yes, and they're looking at papers, like they're planning something. I moved to the front window, careful to stay partially hidden behind the curtain. Sure enough, Jennifer's sleek black SUV was parked about 6 houses down. I could make out 2 figures in the front seats. They've been there at least 20 minutes, Sarah continued. I noticed when I was watering my front garden. I'll call Thomas, I said, though something told me my son might not be entirely forthcoming. Good idea. I'll be over in 15 minutes. Don't confront them alone. After hanging up, I dialed Thomas's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I left a brief message asking him to call me back, trying to keep my voice casual. I was placing the muffins on a cooling rack when I heard car doors slamming outside. Peering through the kitchen window, I saw Jennifer and Melissa walking briskly up my driveway. The doorbell rang before I could decide how to respond. Karen, Jennifer's surprise seemed rehearsed when I opened the door. We were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by. Hope that's okay. Of course, I replied with equal insincerity. I was just baking. Would you like to come in? Actually, Melissa spoke up. We were hoping to walk the property, if you don't mind. The lot dimensions are quite unique. My suspicion solidified into certainty. Why would you need to walk my property? Melissa? Jennifer laughed, a brittle sound. Mom, Melissa was just curious about the architectural style. She specializes in homes from this era. Really, last week she specialized in helping seniors downsize. Jennifer's smile faltered for just a moment. Well, she's very versatile, a real professional. I see. I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. I think we should be clear with each other. I'm not selling my home. Not now. Not in the foreseeable future. Melissa adopted a sympathetic expression. Karen, I understand your attachment, but Jennifer has shared some concerns about your recent confusion. Confusion, I repeated, feeling a chill despite the warm spring day. Jennifer mentioned you've been forgetting important conversations, Melissa continued gently. Misplacing things. It happens with age. I'm sorry, I interrupted. But what exactly have I forgotten or misplaced? Jennifer stepped forward, placing a manicured hand on my arm. Mom, last month you forgot Thomas's birthday dinner, and you've been telling the same stories repeatedly. We've noticed. I stared at her in disbelief. Thomas's birthday is in August. It's May. And I've never missed his birthday in 38 years. Jennifer's expression remained unchanged. See, this is exactly what I mean. We had his birthday dinner early this year because of his business trip. You agreed to it, then didn't show up. We called for hours. This was a blatant lie. I knew it with absolute certainty. Yet Jennifer delivered it with such conviction that for a split second, I questioned my own memory. That never happened, I stated firmly. Jennifer exchanged a meaningful look with Melissa. This is what we're dealing with. Before I could respond, Sarah's voice called from the sidewalk. Karen. Sorry I'm late for coffee. She approached with purposeful strides, eyeing Jennifer and Melissa with undisguised suspicion. Sarah, Jennifer's tone cooled considerably. I didn't realize you were expected. Every Sunday, Sarah replied cheerfully. For the past 3 years, Karen never forgets. She emphasized the last word pointedly. We were just leaving, Melissa said smoothly. Karen, please think about what we discussed. For your own well-being. As they walked back to Jennifer's car, Sarah linked her arm through mine. What was that about? They're trying to convince me I'm losing my mind, I said quietly, watching Jennifer's car pull away. So I'll sell the house. That's ridiculous. You're sharper than both of them put together. They're laying groundwork, I murmured, pieces falling into place. If I won't sell willingly, they'll try to force my hand by claiming I'm incompetent. Sarah's eyes widened. Can they do that? They can try. I led her inside, my mind racing. The question is why? Why are they so determined to get me out of this house now? We settled in the sunroom with coffee and still warm muffins. Sarah took a bite and closed her eyes appreciatively before returning to the problem at hand. Could they need money? Thomas and Jennifer always seemed well off. They project that image, I acknowledged. But Thomas's job doesn't pay what people think, and Jennifer spends extravagantly. Have you checked your financial accounts recently, made sure everything's secure? I nodded. After James died, I updated everything. Thomas isn't on any of my accounts. Good, Sarah hesitated. Karen, I don't want to overstep, but have you considered speaking with a lawyer just to protect yourself? The suggestion was unsettling, but prudent. I'll call Richard Bennett tomorrow. He handled James's estate. Sarah nodded approvingly. Smart, and keep documentation of everything. If they're claiming you're confused or forgetful, you need to prove otherwise. That afternoon, after Sarah left, I pulled out my financial records and began organizing them methodically. Bank statements, investment accounts, property tax assessments, utility bills all paid on time, all meticulously maintained. I created a spreadsheet tracking every transaction for the past year, demonstrating my complete financial competence as I worked. The phone rang. Thomas, Mom got your message. Everything okay? I considered confronting him about Jennifer's visit, but decided against it. Everything's fine. Just wanted to check in. Oh, he sounded relieved. Good. Listen, about dinner last week. I'm sorry if we came on too strong. Jennifer's just concerned. I understand, I said, though I didn't. How are things at work? Thomas sighed. Busy. The company's going through some restructuring. Nothing to worry about. Something in his tone suggested otherwise. Are you sure you know you can talk to me if something's wrong? Everything's fine. Mom? His voice took on that slightly patronizing tone he'd developed in recent years. Look, I should go. Jennifer and I are meeting friends for dinner. After we hung up, I sat at my dining room table surrounded by financial documents, wondering what had happened to the sensitive boy who used to tell me everything. The boy who'd crawl into my lap with skinned knees and hurt feelings. The young man who'd called me first when he got accepted to college, when he landed his first teaching job, when he met the girl he thought was the one. Before Jennifer, Thomas had visited every weekend. He'd help with yard work, stay for dinner, talk about his students with genuine passion. Now I was lucky to see him once a month, and our conversations remained superficial. I was putting away my papers when I noticed a folded newspaper clipping that had fallen to the floor. It was from the local paper, dated 2 months ago. Wilson & Associates Realty expands to lakefront properties. There was Jennifer, smiling proudly in front of a sold sign on an expensive-looking home. The article mentioned her firm's aggressive expansion and significant investment in luxury properties. Significant investment. The phrase lingered in my mind as I prepared for bed that night. How significant, and where had the money come from? The next morning, I called Richard Bennett's office and scheduled an appointment for the following day. Then I drove to my bank and requested statements for all my accounts going back 3 years. The teller looked surprised, but complied without question. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store. As I was selecting produce, a familiar voice called my name. Mrs. Wilson, it's been ages. I turned to see Emma Chen, one of Thomas's former students. She'd been in his first history class when he started teaching. Emma, how wonderful to see you. How are you? I'm great. Just finished my master's in education. Actually, I've been meaning to email Mr. Wilson. He was such an inspiration to me. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. He always spoke highly of you. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Emma's expression turned confused. I tried his old-school email, but it bounced back. And when I looked him up, it said he's working for some corporate training company now. That doesn't sound like the Mr. Wilson I knew. He made a career change a few years ago, I said carefully. That's so strange. He was so passionate about teaching. He used to say he couldn't imagine doing anything else. Emma shook her head. Anyway, if you talk to him, tell him Ms. Chen says hello, and that his lesson on civil disobedience changed my life. I promised I would, and continued shopping. Emma's words echoing in my mind. Thomas had loved teaching. He'd found purpose in it, fulfillment. The corporate job had been Jennifer's idea of better pay, better connections, better future. She'd said, better for whom? When I returned home, there was a voicemail from Thomas. Mom, Jennifer mentioned stopping by yesterday. I'm sorry if she caught you off guard. She's just trying to help. Call me when you can. I deleted the message without returning the call. Something was very wrong, and I needed more information before confronting my son. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Around 2 a.m., I went downstairs for a cup of tea. As the kettle heated, I gazed out at the backyard, silver in the moonlight. The swing set James had built for Thomas still stood in the corner, though it had been years since anyone had used it. I'd kept it maintained out of sentiment, a connection to happier times. A movement outside caught my eye, a car passing slowly on the street. Headlights off. It paused briefly in front of my house before continuing. Probably just teenagers, I told myself, but a sense of unease persisted. The next day, I met with Richard Bennett, at 70. He had aged well, his silver hair and dignified bearing giving him the perfect look for an attorney. He'd handled our family's legal matters for decades and had been a good friend to James. "Karen, it's good to see you," he said warmly, rising to greet me. Though I gather this isn't a social call, I explained the situation: Jennifer's sudden interest in selling my house, the claims that I was confused, the real estate agent showing up uninvited. Richard listened intently, making occasional notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "This is concerning," he admitted, "especially the attempts to suggest you're experiencing cognitive decline. That could be groundwork for a competency challenge." "Can they do that?" I asked, echoing Sarah's question. "It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. Especially if they get a sympathetic doctor involved, or if you were to sign something while allegedly confused." He frowned. "Have they asked you to sign anything power of attorney healthcare directive changes to your will?" "Not yet." "Good. Don't sign anything without talking to me first." Richard pulled out a legal pad. "Let's take some preventative measures. First, I recommend you get a comprehensive cognitive assessment from a geriatric specialist, not your regular doctor, and certainly not anyone Jennifer recommends. We want an unbiased evaluation on record." I nodded, making a note. "Second, I suggest updating your will and advance directives to explicitly reflect your current wishes. If they do try to claim you're incompetent later, we'll have documentation that you were of sound mind when you made these decisions." "I'll do that." "Third," Richard continued, "document everything, every interaction with Jennifer and Thomas, every unusual occurrence. Dates, times, witnesses if possible." "Already started," I confirmed. Richard smiled approvingly. "You're ahead of me. Good. Now, there's one more thing to consider." He hesitated. "Have you thought about what might be driving this sudden push to sell your house? Financial problems? Perhaps." I shared my suspicions about Jennifer's real estate business and Thomas's job insecurity. "I'll have my investigator look into it discreetly," Richard offered. "Sometimes understanding the motivation helps anticipate the next move." As I was leaving, Richard placed a hand on my shoulder. "Karen, be careful. If they're desperate enough, they might escalate. Do you have somewhere safe you could go if needed?" "Sarah would take me in," I said, though the idea that I might need to flee my own home was disturbing. "Good. And Karen," his expression softened, "James would be proud of how you're handling this." I drove home feeling both reassured and troubled. Richard's concern confirmed my suspicions weren't paranoia, but the reality of my situation was sinking in. My own son might be involved in a scheme to declare me incompetent and take my home. When I arrived home, there was an unfamiliar car in my driveway, a black sedan with tinted windows. As I parked on the street, the driver's door opened, and a woman emerged. "Mrs. Wilson," she called. "I'm Dr. Patel. Jennifer asked me to stop by. She's concerned about your health." I remained in my car, doors locked. "I didn't agree to any doctor's appointment." The woman approached, smiling reassuringly. "It's just an informal check-in. Jennifer mentioned you've been experiencing some memory issues, and she's worried." "Did she?" I started my car again. "Please tell my daughter-in-law that if she's concerned about my health, she can call me directly. And I choose my own doctors. Thank you." I drove away, heart pounding. In my rearview mirror, I saw Dr. Patel watching me go, phone already at her ear. This was no longer just about a house. This was about my autonomy, my dignity, my life. And I was not going to surrender without a fight. The following week settled into an uneasy pattern. Jennifer's direct attempts to convince me to sell the house ceased, but I noticed other, subtler tactics. Thomas called more frequently, always steering the conversation toward how difficult home maintenance must be for me. Friends from church mentioned Jennifer had expressed concerns about my well-being. Even my regular doctor asked pointed questions about my memory during a routine visit. I documented everything meticulously. Each comment, each unusual occurrence went into a notebook I kept locked in my desk. Richard's investigator, a soft-spoken man named James Cooper, checked in weekly, gathering information on Jennifer's business dealings and Thomas's financial situation. Mrs. Wilson, Cooper said during our third meeting, held discreetly at Richard's office. I've confirmed that Wilson & Associates Realty is in serious financial trouble. They've overextended on several luxury property developments that aren't selling. How serious, I asked. Based on public records and some confidential sources, I estimate they're carrying at least $480,000 in debt, possibly more. The figure stunned me. That's more than my house is worth. Cooper nodded grimly. Which might explain the urgency. They need cash, and they need it soon. That evening, I sat in my garden, watching fireflies rise from the grass as twilight deepened. The magnolia tree was in full bloom, its heavy white flowers luminous in the fading light. 40 years of memories surrounded me in this yard, Thomas learning to ride a bike on the driveway, James grilling on summer evenings, neighborhood children running through the sprinkler on hot days. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Thomas. Mom, you home? Yes. Why? Just checking. His voice sounded strange, strained. Listen, about the house. Jennifer and I have been talking. What if we bought it from you? You could still live there, but we'd handle all the maintenance, the property taxes, everything. The proposal was so transparent it was almost insulting. Thomas, do you think I was born yesterday? You'd buy my house at below market value with money you don't have. Then what evict me when it's convenient? Mom, he sounded genuinely shocked. We would never stop. My voice was steady but firm. Thomas, I know about Jennifer's financial problems. I know about the failed developments, the overextended loans. What I don't know is why my own son is trying to take advantage of me, instead of being honest about needing help. Silence stretched between us. It's complicated, Mom, he finally said, his voice small. Then uncomplicate it. Talk to me, Thomas, not as Jennifer's husband, but as my son. I heard him take a deep breath. Can we meet tomorrow, just us? Yes, come for lunch. Noon. After we hung up, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Thomas was finally ready to break free from whatever hold Jennifer had on him. Perhaps we could salvage our relationship. I slept better that night than I had in weeks, waking refreshed and optimistic. I spent the morning preparing Thomas's favorite lunch, homemade chicken salad sandwiches, potato soup, and chocolate chip cookies still warm from the oven. But noon came and went with no sign of Thomas. At 12:30, I called his cell phone. No answer. By 1:00, the soup had cooled, and the cookies had hardened. At 1:30, I texted him, Are you coming? The response came immediately. Sorry, meeting ran long. Can't make it. Talk soon. I stared at the message, disappointment and suspicion warring within me. Had Jennifer intercepted my call? Had she convinced Thomas to cancel? Or had he simply lost his nerve? The rest of the day passed slowly. I called Sarah, who came over with a bottle of wine in righteous indignation on my behalf. He stood you up, his own mother, she fumed, pouring generous glasses for both of us. After everything you've done for him. Something's not right, I said, more puzzled than angry. Thomas has never been a coward. Even as a child, he'd own up to his mistakes. People change, Sarah said darkly, especially with the wrong influences. We finished the wine as the sun set, Sarah's company easing my disappointment. After she left, I locked up and headed to bed early, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. I awoke to the acrid smell of smoke. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming a nightmare about fire and loss. Then I opened my eyes and saw an orange glow reflecting off my bedroom ceiling. I sat up, heart pounding. The smell was stronger now, unmistakable. Smoke was seeping under my bedroom door. I grabbed my robe and cell phone, then pressed my hand against the door. It was warm but not hot. Carefully, I opened it a crack. The hallway was filling with gray smoke that stung my eyes and burned my throat. Through the haze, I could see flames flickering at the bottom of the stairs, hungrily consuming the antique console table where I kept family photos. My mind raced. The fire was blocking the main exit. The back stairs from the kitchen would be my best escape route. but I'd have to move quickly before the fire spread. I tied a damp washcloth over my nose and mouth, then made my way down the hallway, staying low where the air was clearer. The smoke was thickening rapidly, reducing visibility to just a few feet. I reached the back stairs and began descending carefully, one hand on the wall for guidance. Halfway down, I heard a loud crash from the living room, something large collapsing, feeding the growing inferno. The kitchen was still clear of flames, though smoke was pouring in from the dining room. I grabbed my purse and the emergency bag I kept ready, a habit James had insisted on years ago. Inside were copies of important documents, some cash, medications, and a few irreplaceable photos. As I reached for the back door, I noticed something strange on the kitchen counter, a glass bottle I didn't recognize, tipped on its side. Even in my panicked state, I knew it didn't belong there. No time to investigate now. I fled into the night air, gasping as my lungs filled with clean oxygen. From the safety of my backyard, I called 911, then watched in horror as flames engulfed the first floor of my home. Neighbors emerged from their houses, alerted by the commotion. Sarah was the first to reach me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. Karen. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I nodded, unable to speak, as I watched 40 years of memories being consumed by fire. Fire trucks arrived within minutes, their sirens piercing the night. Firefighters deployed hoses, shouting instructions to each other as they battled the blaze. A paramedic examined me briefly, confirming I hadn't suffered smoke inhalation or burns. "Ma'am, do you have somewhere to go tonight?" he asked gently. Before I could answer, Sarah stepped forward. "She's staying with me." The fire chief approached as dawn broke, his face grave beneath his helmet. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Chief Rodriguez. The fire is contained, but I'm afraid there's significant damage to the first floor. The structure is unsafe to enter right now." "What caused it?" I asked, my voice hoarse. The chief exchanged a look with a colleague. "We'll need to conduct a full investigation, but there are some concerning aspects. The point of origin appears to be multiple locations on the first floor, which is unusual for an accidental fire." "You think it was deliberate?" Sarah gasped. "We can't confirm anything yet," Chief Rodriguez said carefully. "But our investigators will be thorough." As if summoned by the conversation, a car screeched to a halt at the curb. Thomas leapt out, face pale with shock. "Mom!" He ran toward me, enveloping me in a tight hug. "Are you okay? We just heard—" "I'm fine," I assured him, returning the embrace despite my confusion. How had he heard so quickly? It was barely 6 a.m. Jennifer emerged from the car more slowly, her face a mask of appropriate concern. "Oh, Karen, how awful. Thank goodness you're safe." Something in her tone made me pull away from Thomas to study her more carefully. Her makeup was perfect, her clothes immaculate. At 6 a.m., after presumably being woken by news of a fire, even her hair was styled. "The firefighters think it might have been deliberately set," I said, watching her reaction closely. A flicker of something surprise alarm crossed her face before she composed herself. "That's terrible. Who would do such a thing?" "I have no idea," I replied evenly. "But I'm sure the investigation will find out." Thomas looked genuinely distressed. "Mom, you can't stay here. Come home with us. We have the guest room all ready." The guest room all ready, at 6 a.m. after an unexpected fire. "Thank you, but I'm staying with Sarah," I said firmly. "I have clothes and toiletries at her house from when she had her bathroom renovated last year." Jennifer's lips thinned slightly. "But we're family. You should be with family at a time like this." "Sarah is like family," I countered. "And her house is right across the street. I'll be close when the fire investigators need to speak with me." Thomas seemed about to argue, but Jennifer placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable. But the offer stands." As they walked back to their car, I noticed Jennifer whisper something to Thomas that made him glance back at the smoldering house with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Sarah squeezed my hand. "You're right not to go with them." "Something's very wrong," I murmured. They arrived too quickly, too prepared. And did you notice Jennifer's appearance? Perfect makeup at dawn after an emergency call. Maybe she's just one of those women who won't leave the house without her face on, Sarah suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Maybe. I stared at the ruins of my home, a terrible suspicion forming. Or maybe they knew about the fire before it happened. Chief Rodriguez approached again, notebook in hand. Mrs. Wilson, when you're feeling up to it, I'd like to ask you some questions about last night. Any details you remember could be helpful. I nodded, then remembered the strange bottle I'd seen in the kitchen. There was something unusual, a glass bottle on the kitchen counter that I didn't recognize. It was tipped over, like it had been left in a hurry. The chief's expression sharpened. What kind of bottle do you remember its color or shape? Green glass. I think thicker than a wine bottle, the kind that might hold chemicals. He made a note, like paint thinner or turpentine. The suggestion sent a chill through me. Yes, exactly like that. Had you been doing any home repairs recently, painting or refinishing furniture? No, and I keep household chemicals in the garage, never in the kitchen. Chief Rodriguez exchanged a significant look with his colleague. We'll look for evidence of accelerants. In the meantime, is there anyone you can think of who might want to harm you or damage your property? The question hung in the air between us. Did I suspect my own son of arson? Could I bring myself to voice that suspicion to authorities? I've had some disagreements recently, I said carefully. About the house? What kind of disagreements? I hesitated, then made a decision. My daughter-in-law has been pressuring me to sell. She's a real estate agent, and I recently learned her business is in financial trouble. The chief wrote this down without comment. Anyone else? No, I've lived here peacefully for 40 years. After the fire chief left, Sarah led me back to her house. She made coffee while I sat at her kitchen table, still wrapped in the blanket, trying to process what had happened. You should call Richard, Sarah said, placing a steaming mug in front of me. I nodded numbly, reaching for my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen, a new and terrible thought stopping me. Sarah, I said slowly, what if Thomas and Jennifer set the fire to force me out if the house is uninhabitable? I'd have to stay with them. They'd have access to my papers, my accounts. They could easily have me declared incompetent while I was disoriented from the trauma. Sarah's face paled. You think your own son would burn down your house with you inside? The question pierced my heart. I don't want to believe it, but the timing, Jennifer's appearance, the bottle in the kitchen, it's all wrong. I dialed Richard's number, my hand shaking slightly. When he answered, I briefly explained what had happened. Don't go anywhere, he said immediately. I'm coming to you. And Karen, don't tell Thomas and Jennifer where you're staying. Not yet. After hanging up, I sat in silence, sipping coffee that I couldn't taste. The events of the night replayed in my mind: the smoke, the flames, the strange bottle on the counter. And before that, Thomas canceling our lunch, the financial troubles, Jennifer's increasingly desperate attempts to get me to sell. The pattern was clear, even if I didn't want to see it. My own family had tried to burn me out of my home. The question was, what would they do next? Richard arrived at Sarah's house within the hour, looking grave but determined. He'd brought his investigator, James Cooper, and a woman he introduced as Diane Winters, a forensic accountant. We need to move quickly, Richard said once we were all seated in Sarah's living room. If what you suspect is true, they won't stop with the fire. I still can't believe Thomas would do this, I said, my voice catching. He's my son. Richard's expression softened. People do desperate things when they're in financial trouble, and we know Jennifer's business is failing. Cooper has uncovered more details. The investigator opened his laptop. Wilson and Associates took out several high-interest loans to finance luxury developments around Lake Morrison. The market has cooled significantly, and they haven't sold a single property in the last quarter. They've missed 2 loan payments already. How bad is it? I asked. They're about 60 days from bankruptcy, Cooper replied. Unless they can come up with significant capital quickly, Diane Winters spoke up. I've been analyzing their public filings. They've been moving money between accounts to create the appearance of solvency, but it's essentially a shell game. And there's something else, a series of withdrawals from their personal accounts totaling about $25,000 over the past month. What for? Richard asked. That's the interesting part, Diane said, turning her laptop so we could see the screen. Most were cash withdrawals, but I found one payment to a company called Phoenix Recovery Services. A debt collector, I guessed. No, Cooper interjected. It's a front for a loan shark operation run by a man named Victor Mendez. He's been investigated multiple times but never charged. His clients pay interest rates of 30% or higher, and he's not known for his patience when payments are late. The implications were chilling. You think Jennifer and Thomas borrowed money from a loan shark? It appears so, Cooper confirmed. And based on the timing of the payments, they're already behind on repaying it. Richard leaned forward. Karen, this changes the urgency of the situation. If they're involved with someone like Mendez, the pressure on them is enormous. They might take even more desperate measures. What should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. First, we secure your assets, Richard said decisively. Diane will help you move your accounts to new banks today. We'll need to update your will and create a revocable trust with specific provisions to protect you. I nodded, grateful for his clear guidance. Second, Richard continued, we gather evidence. Cooper will work with the fire investigators. If we can prove Jennifer and Thomas were involved, we'll have leverage. And third, I prompted. Richard's expression hardened slightly. We set a trap. Make them think they're getting what they want, then reveal what we know. We spent the morning implementing Richard's plan. Diane accompanied me to 2 different banks, where I opened new accounts and transferred my funds. We also visited a safe deposit box facility, where I secured important documents and valuables salvaged from the fire. By afternoon, I was exhausted but more secure. My financial resources were protected. My will updated to explicitly exclude Jennifer from any inheritance and to include provisions questioning any changes made under duress. There's one more thing, Richard said as we reconvened at Sarah's house. We need to monitor their next moves. I'd like to install some discreet surveillance. A knock at the door interrupted him. Sarah peeked through the curtains, then turned to me with alarm. It's Thomas and Jennifer. Richard quickly gathered the papers spread across the coffee table. Don't let them know we're here. Act normal, but careful. Sarah nodded and opened the door while the rest of us retreated to the kitchen, still within earshot. Thomas, Jennifer. Sarah's voice carried a hint of coolness. What brings you here? We're looking for my mother, Thomas replied. Is she staying with you? She is. Come in. I emerged from the kitchen alone, presenting the image of a traumatized but composed woman. Thomas, Jennifer, I wasn't expecting you. Jennifer stepped forward, arms outstretched for a hug I couldn't bring myself to return. We've been so worried. Why didn't you answer your phone? It's been a busy morning, I replied neutrally. Insurance adjusters, fire investigators, bank appointments. Bank appointments, Thomas echoed, something flickering in his eyes. Yes, I needed to arrange access to funds since everything is in the house. Jennifer nodded sympathetically. Of course, that must be so stressful. Which is exactly why we think you should come stay with us. We can help with all of that. That's very kind, but I'm comfortable here with Sarah. Thomas stepped closer, his expression earnest. Mom, please, after everything that's happened, you need family around you. Let us take care of you. The sincerity in his voice nearly broke my resolve. This was my son, the child I'd raised. Was I wrong about him? Had I misinterpreted everything? Then I noticed Jennifer's gaze darting around Sarah's living room, assessing, calculating. Her eyes lingered on my purse, where my checkbook and new bank cards were stored. I appreciate the offer, I said, stepping subtly between Jennifer and my purse. But I've already made arrangements. Jennifer's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. What arrangements? You've lost everything, Karen. Not everything, I corrected. I have my health, my friends, and contingency plans James and I made years ago. Contingency plans, Thomas repeated, exchanging a quick glance with Jennifer. Insurance, emergency funds, that sort of thing, I explained vaguely. James was always prepared for the unexpected. Jennifer's demeanor shifted slightly. Well, that's a relief. But still, you should be with family. This has been such a shock. And at your age? My age? I raised an eyebrow. I'm 63, Jennifer, not 90. I'm perfectly capable of managing my affairs. Of course you are, she backpedaled quickly. It's just that trauma can affect people differently, especially seniors. You might not realize if you're making confused decisions. There it was again, the subtle suggestion of incompetence, the groundwork for taking control. I assure you, my mind is quite clear, I said firmly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an appointment with the fire investigator in 30 minutes. We'll drive you, Thomas offered immediately. Sarah's taking me, but thank you. Jennifer's pleasant facade cracked slightly. Karen, I don't think you understand. We're trying to help you. After everything we've done, she stopped abruptly, catching herself. Everything you've done, I echoed, watching her carefully. To support you, she finished smoothly. Through James's death, and now this. Thomas placed a hand on her arm, a warning gesture. We should go. Jen, Mom knows we're here if she needs us. As they turned to leave, Jennifer paused. Oh, I almost forgot. The insurance adjuster will need your policy information. Do you have it here? Or is it in the house? The question seemed innocent enough, but something in her tone made me wary. It's safe, I said simply. I'll provide it directly to the insurance company. After they left, I returned to the kitchen where Richard, Cooper, and Diane were waiting. You heard, I asked. Richard nodded grimly. Every word. They're fishing for information about your finances and insurance. And Jennifer almost slipped up. After everything we've done. She could have meant anything by that, I said, still reluctant to fully accept what the evidence was suggesting. Maybe, Cooper acknowledged. But combined with everything else, it's concerning, especially their eagerness to have you stay with them. Sarah brought in a tray of sandwiches, her expression troubled. I've known Thomas since he was a baby. I still can't believe he'd do something like this. People can be influenced, Richard said gently, especially when they're facing financial ruin and possibly threats from loan sharks. I picked at my sandwich, my appetite gone. What now? Now, Richard said. We follow the evidence wherever it leads, and we prepare for their next move. That evening, after Richard and his team left, I sat on Sarah's porch, watching the fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. The charred remains of my home stood across the street, yellow caution tape fluttering in the breeze. My phone rang an unknown number. Mrs. Wilson, this is Chief Rodriguez from the fire department. I wanted to update you on our investigation. Thank you, Chief. What have you found? The fire was definitely arson, he confirmed, his voice grave. We found traces of accelerant in multiple locations, living room, dining room, and at the base of the stairs. Though I'd suspected as much, hearing it confirmed sent a chill through me. The bottle I mentioned, found fragments of it in the kitchen. It was turpentine, and there's no reason it should have been there. I closed my eyes briefly. Any other evidence? Our investigators found something interesting on a neighbor's security camera. A car matching your son's vehicle was recorded on your street around midnight, 3 hours before the fire started. 2 people exited the car, approached your house, and left approximately 20 minutes later. My heart sank. Can you identify them? Not conclusively from the footage. The quality isn't great, and they were wearing hooded sweatshirts. He paused. Mrs. Wilson, given what you told me about the pressure to sell your house, we're taking this very seriously. The police will want to interview your son and daughter-in-law. I understand, I says, my voice barely audible. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at the ruined house where I'd built my life. The evidence was mounting, becoming impossible to deny. Thomas and Jennifer had tried to burn me out, or worse. The realization that my own child could do this to me was more devastating than the loss of my home. What had happened to the sweet boy who'd once made me Mother's Day cards with hand-traced flowers, who'd cried when he accidentally broke my favorite vase? Not because he feared punishment, but because he knew I loved it. When had he changed? Or had Jennifer's influence truly been that powerful? My phone rang again. Thomas. For a moment, I considered not answering. What could I possibly say to him now? but some maternal instinct made me press the accept button. "Hello, Thomas." "Mom." His voice sounded strange, strained. "I need to see you. Alone. Can I come over? Now." "Yes. It's important. Please." "Mom." Something in his tone desperation, maybe fear, made me agree. "All right. But just you, not Jennifer." "Just me," he confirmed. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I informed Sarah of the impending visit. Her concern was immediate. "Are you sure that's wise, after what the fire chief told you? I need to hear what he has to say," I replied. "Maybe there's an explanation." "Then I'm staying right here with you," Sarah declared, settling firmly on the couch. Thomas arrived exactly 20 minutes later, alone as promised. He looked terrible, face pale, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled. Not the polished professional Jennifer had molded him into, but a man on the edge. "Mom," he said when I opened the door, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stepped aside to let him enter, maintaining a careful distance. "Sorry for what? Thomas?" He noticed Sarah sitting in the living room and hesitated. "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Sarah." I told him. "She's heard everything else." Thomas sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't know it would go this far. You have to believe me." "What wouldn't go this far?" I pressed. Though I already knew. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "The fire. I thought we were just going to scare you a little, make the house seem unsafe so you'd agree to sell or move in with us. I didn't know Jennifer was going to use accelerant." The confession hit me like a physical blow, even expecting it. Hearing the words from my son's mouth was devastating. "You were willing to scare your own mother." My voice was remarkably steady, given the turmoil inside me. "To make me think my house was unsafe. For what? Thomas, money." "It's not that simple," he protested weakly. "We're in trouble. Mom, serious trouble. Jennifer's business is failing, and we borrowed money from people you don't want to owe." "Victor Mendez," I supplied, watching his eyes widen in shock. "How did you—" "I have resources too, Thomas. I'm not the helpless old woman Jennifer seems to think I am." He shook his head miserably. "You don't understand. These people threatened us, said they'd hurt Jennifer if we didn't pay. We needed money fast, and your house? It's just sitting there, worth so much. So you decided to burn it down with me inside." "No." His denial seemed genuine. "The fire was supposed to be small, contained to the living room, just enough to make the house seem unsafe. You were supposed to call us, come stay with us. Then Jennifer would convince you to sell, handle everything while you were recovering from the trauma." The cold calculation of the plan shocked me almost as much as the fire itself. "And then what, Thomas, after I sold the house, where would I live?" He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "There's a retirement community Jennifer found. Very nice. Lots of activities." "A nursing home," I translated flatly. "You were going to take my money and put me in a home." "It's not like that," he protested weakly. "You'd have been comfortable, taken care of." "While you and Jennifer paid off your debts with my money." I shook my head in disbelief. "Did you ever stop to think that if you were in financial trouble, you could have just asked me for help as your mother, not as your personal ATM?" Thomas looked genuinely startled by the suggestion. Jennifer said you wouldn't understand, that you'd judge us for our failures. So instead you decided to commit arson," Sarah interjected, unable to contain herself any longer. "Thomas Wilson, I've known you since you were in diapers. What were you thinking?" He buried his face in his hands again. "I wasn't thinking. I was scared. Mendez's people made it very clear what would happen if we didn't pay. So you put your mother's life at risk instead." Sarah's voice rose incredulously. "I never thought she'd be in danger," Thomas insisted. "The fire was supposed to be small, controlled." "Fires don't work that way," I said quietly. "You could have killed me." "Thomas?" The weight of that statement hung in the air between us. My son, my only child, had participated in a plan that could have ended my life. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked. "Why the confession?" Thomas swallowed hard. "Jennifer doesn't know I'm here. After we left earlier, she started talking about other plans, about how you're clearly traumatized and making erratic decisions. She wants to petition for guardianship, claim you're not competent to manage your affairs after the trauma of the fire. And you disagree. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Mom, I know I've done something unforgivable, but I won't let her do that to you. He looked up, a flash of the sun I remembered in his eyes. I came to warn you, and to turn myself in. I stared at him in shock. Turn yourself in. He nodded miserably. To the police, for the arson. I can't live with what I've done. And maybe, if I cooperate, they'll be lenient with the sentencing. Part of me wanted to embrace him, to tell him everything would be all right. But the larger part remained wary. Was this another manipulation, a ploy to gain sympathy and avoid consequences? What about Jennifer? I asked. Will you implicate her too? Thomas hesitated, that old loyalty visibly warring with his newfound conscience. She's my wife, Mom, and I'm your mother, I countered. That didn't stop you from burning down my house. He flinched as if I'd struck him. I'll tell the truth, about all of it. Jennifer, Mendez, everything. I studied my son's face, searching for deception. All I saw was misery, regret, and fear. There's something else you should know, I said after a long moment. The fire chief called earlier. A neighbor's security camera captured 2 people matching your and Jennifer's description entering my property around midnight last night. Thomas paled further. They have footage not clear enough to definitively identify you. But with your confession, he nodded, accepting this. I'll go to the police station now, tonight. I'll drive you, Sarah offered unexpectedly. When I looked at her in surprise, she added, to make sure he actually goes. As they prepared to leave, Thomas turned to me one last time. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am sorry. Mom, more than I can ever express. I nodded, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. After they left, I sat alone in Sarah's living room, staring at the wall. My son was on his way to confess to arson. My house was destroyed. My daughter-in-law had plotted against me. In the space of 24 hours, my world had completely unraveled. My phone rang again. Richard. Karen, I just heard from Cooper. The fire department found conclusive evidence of arson, and they're looking for Thomas and Jennifer for questioning. Thomas just left for the police station, I said, my voice hollow. He's going to confess. Richard's surprise was audible. Confess what happened. I recounted Thomas's visit and his revelations about Jennifer's plans. This changes things, Richard said thoughtfully. If Thomas is cooperating, the authorities will likely focus on Jennifer and potentially this Mendez character. What does this mean for me? I asked, suddenly overwhelmed by the practical implications. My house is gone. My son will likely go to jail. What do I do now? You rebuild, Richard replied with quiet confidence. Literally and figuratively, the insurance will cover the house. As for Thomas, his cooperation will count in his favor. And Karen, yes, you don't have to face this alone. The simple statement broke something inside me. For the first time since the fire, I allowed myself to truly feel the magnitude of what had happened. Tears came in a sudden, overwhelming wave. Richard stayed on the phone, his steady presence a comfort as I released the fear, betrayal, and grief that had been building since I awoke to the smell of smoke. When I finally regained composure, I felt oddly lighter. Thank you, I said softly. For what? For being there. For helping me fight. I'm not going anywhere, Karen, he promised. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it together. As I prepared for bed in Sarah's guest room that night, I looked out the window at the charred skeleton of my home. 40 years of memories, reduced to ash and debris. Yet somehow, I felt a strange sense of determination rising from the devastation. This was not the end of my story. It was merely the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Whatever came next, rebuilding my home, navigating Thomas's legal troubles. Confronting Jennifer, I would face it with the same strength that had carried me through widowhood and now this betrayal. From the ashes of what was lost, something new would rise. And this time, I would build it on my terms. The morning after Thomas's confession dawned with a clarity that seemed almost cruel given the chaos of my life. I sat at Sarah's kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold before me, as she bustled around preparing breakfast. "You need to eat something," she insisted, placing a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me. "You hardly touched dinner last night." "I'm not hungry," I replied, though I picked up my fork out of respect for her concern. My phone rang Richard. "Karen, good morning. I have updates," he said without preamble. "Thomas spent the night in custody. He's been formally charged with arson, but the DA is considering reduced charges in exchange for his continued cooperation." "And Jennifer?" I asked. "They brought her in for questioning last night. According to my contact at the police department, she denied everything, claimed Thomas was acting alone." I closed my eyes briefly. Even now, Jennifer was throwing my son under the bus to save herself. "What happens next?" "Thomas has his arraignment this morning. I've arranged for a good criminal defense attorney to represent him." Richard paused. "Karen, there's something else. The fire investigator wants to meet with you at the house today. They found additional evidence." An hour later, I stood before the charred remains of my home. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, acrid and accusatory. Chief Rodriguez greeted me with a grim nod. "Mrs. Wilson, thank you for coming. We've completed our initial investigation, and there are some findings I wanted to show you personally." He led me carefully along the perimeter of the house, pointing out multiple points of origin for the fire. Whoever did this wanted to ensure the house burned completely. They placed accelerants in strategic locations to maximize damage. "But it didn't burn completely," I observed, noting that while the first floor was destroyed, portions of the second floor remained relatively intact. "No, thanks to your quick actions and our rapid response." The chief gestured toward what had been my living room. "We found something interesting there. A bottle of prescription medication that survived the fire." He handed me an evidence bag containing a slightly melted orange prescription bottle, my name still visible on the label. "Blood pressure medication," I noted. "I keep it in my bathroom upstairs." "Exactly. So why was it in your living room, near one of the points of origin?" I stared at the bottle, a terrible realization dawning. They wanted it to look like I was careless, like I left medication downstairs, started a fire accidentally. "Possibly," the chief agreed. "Or worse, that you weren't mentally competent to safely live alone." The calculated cruelty of it stunned me. Not content with burning my house, they had tried to use my own medication to question my competence. "There's more," Chief Rodriguez continued, leading me toward what remained of my kitchen. "We found fragments of 3 different containers of accelerant, turpentine, as you identified, plus paint thinner and charcoal lighter fluid. This wasn't impulsive, it was premeditated, carefully planned." "My son confessed," I said quietly. "He turned himself in last night." The chief nodded. "I heard. His cooperation has been helpful, but according to my colleagues, he's claiming the more extensive use of accelerants was his wife's idea, that he only intended a small, contained fire." "Do you believe him?" Chief Rodriguez considered the question carefully. "The evidence suggests the fire was planned by someone who knew what they were doing. Either your son is minimizing his role, or his wife knew more about arson than the average person." After finishing with the fire investigator, I returned to Sarah's house to find Richard waiting with a distinguished-looking woman in her early 40s. "Karen, this is Elena Rodriguez, the attorney I mentioned for Thomas." Elena rose to shake my hand, her grip firm and professional. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm very sorry about your situation. I've already spoken with your son this morning." "How is he?" I couldn't help asking, maternal concern surfacing despite everything. "Physically fine. Emotionally devastated." Elena's expression was compassionate but honest. "He's fully cooperating with authorities. He's provided detailed information about the financial troubles, the loan from Mendez, and Jennifer's role in planning the arson. Will that help his case?" Elena nodded. "Substantially. The DA is considering reducing the charges from first-degree arson to second-degree, with the possibility of a plea arrangement." "What kind of sentence would that mean?" My voice caught slightly. "Potentially 2 to 5 years, possibly with parole after serving half the sentence, without cooperation. He was looking at 7 to 10 years minimum. The reality of it hit me like a physical blow. My son, my only child, would spend years in prison. Despite what he'd done, the thought brought a fresh wave of grief. "I know this is difficult," Elena said gently, "but Thomas made a choice to come forward. That counts for something, both legally and morally." "What about Jennifer?" I asked. "Thomas said she was planning to petition for guardianship over me, claim I was incompetent after the trauma of the fire." Richard and Elena exchanged concerned glances. "That's still a possibility," Richard admitted. "Though with Thomas's testimony, her credibility is severely damaged. Still, we should prepare for that scenario." "How?" I demanded. "We've already started," Richard assured me. "The updated will, the cognitive assessment you completed last week, the documentation of Jennifer's previous attempts to suggest you were confused, all of that creates a strong defense against any guardianship petition." "But we need more," Elena added. "We need to establish a clear pattern of manipulation and financial exploitation. That's where our next steps come in." As they outlined their strategy, I felt a strange mix of gratitude and sorrow. These people, Richard, Elena, Sarah, even Cooper and Diane, were fighting for me with dedication and skill. Yet the circumstances that had brought us together were tragic beyond measure. Later that afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Wilson," a woman's voice inquired. "This is Dr. Carolyn Chen from Hillside Medical Center. I understand you're Thomas Wilson's mother." "Yes," I confirmed, my pulse quickening. "Is something wrong with Thomas? He's asked to see you." "He's being treated for anxiety in our facility." "Treated? I thought he was in police custody." "He experienced what appears to be a severe panic attack during questioning. The officers brought him here for evaluation." Dr. Chen's voice softened slightly. "He's quite distressed. Mrs. Wilson, he's been asking for you repeatedly." I agreed to come immediately. Richard insisted on driving me, concerned about Jennifer potentially being at the hospital. "She's still his wife," he reminded me. "She has visitation rights, unless a restraining order says otherwise." But when we arrived at the hospital, there was no sign of Jennifer. A police officer stood outside Thomas's room, a procedural requirement for prisoners receiving medical treatment. Thomas lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen him since childhood. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale with exhaustion. "Mom," he said when he saw me, his voice breaking. "You came?" Despite everything, my heart twisted at the sight of my child in pain. I moved to his bedside, taking his hand. "Of course I came." Thomas broke down then, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me, how I could have done this to you." I sat quietly, letting him speak. "It started small," he continued after composing himself. "Jennifer's business was struggling, but she kept taking on more properties, more developments. She said we needed to project success to achieve success." "And the loans?" I prompted gently. "The bank turned us down for additional financing. Jennifer was desperate. She'd promised investors returns they weren't getting. That's when she found Mendez." Thomas shuddered. "He seemed legitimate at first. Private investor. High interest, but not outrageous. Then the terms changed. The interest doubled, then tripled. When we couldn't pay, his people started making threats. Why didn't you come to me?" I couldn't help asking. Thomas looked away, ashamed. "Jennifer said you'd judge us, that you'd never approved of her, of our lifestyle. And I believed her. I let her convince me you wouldn't understand." "So the fire was her idea?" "Yes. No." He struggled visibly. "She suggested we needed to get you out of the house, into assisted living where we could protect you. I resisted at first, but as the pressure from Mendez increased," he trailed off. "The night of the fire," I pressed. "What happened?" Thomas closed his eyes, as if unable to look at me while confessing. "We drove to your house around midnight. We had a plan to create a small electrical fire in the living room, make it look like faulty wiring. I was supposed to disable the smoke detectors on the first floor, but I couldn't do it. I left them functional, thinking at least you'd be alerted quickly. But Jennifer brought accelerants, I said, remembering the chief's findings. Thomas nodded miserably. I didn't know until we got there. She had a bag with bottles turpentine, paint thinner. When I saw them, I tried to back out, but she said it was too late, that Mendez would come after us if we didn't get the money from your house. So you went through with it, I stated. Not a question, but a confirmation. I helped her spread some of the accelerants, he admitted, tears flowing again. But when she wanted to put some at the base of the stairs, I refused. We argued. I told her that would trap you upstairs if the fire spread too quickly. The revelation chilled me. Jennifer had been willing to block my escape route. I thought I'd convinced her, Thomas continued. We left, and I believed we'd only set up for a small, controlled fire in the living room, but after I dropped her off at home, she must have gone back. What makes you say that? The police showed me security footage from our neighbor's house. My car was recorded at 12:15 a.m., leaving with both of us inside. But there's another recording at 1:30 a.m. of someone walking toward your house from the direction of the bus stop. The figure is wearing Jennifer's distinctive red coat. If true, this meant Jennifer had returned to my house alone, likely to place additional accelerants, including at the base of the stairs, potentially trapping me. Have you told the police this? I asked. Yes. They're checking other security cameras in the area to track her movements that night. We sat in silence for a moment, the magnitude of what he was suggesting hanging between us. Thomas, I finally said, did Jennifer ever talk about what would happen to me in the fire? His face crumpled. She always said you'd smell the smoke, get out in time, that the point was to destroy the house, not... He couldn't finish the sentence. But if she came back, placed accelerants at the stairs without telling you... I don't know what she intended, Thomas whispered. I don't want to believe she would. But I don't know anymore. The Jennifer I'm seeing now isn't the woman I thought I married. Before I could respond, Dr. Chen entered with a police officer. Mrs. Wilson, I'm sorry, but we need to prepare your son for transport back to the detention center. I squeezed Thomas's hand. I'll visit you, and I'll make sure Elena keeps working on your case. As I rose to leave, Thomas held onto my hand. Mom, do you think you could ever forgive me? The question struck my heart. Could I? Should I? This was my son, my only child, but he had participated in destroying my home, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. I don't know, I answered honestly. But I'm not giving up on you, Thomas. It was all I could offer him right then, not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of redemption. As Richard drove me back to Sarah's house, I stared out the window at the passing neighborhoods, each home representing a family, relationships, stories I would never know. You're very quiet, Richard observed after several minutes. I'm trying to reconcile the son I raised with the man who helped burn down my house, I replied. And I'm wondering if Jennifer truly meant for me to die in that fire. Richard's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Cooper is looking into Jennifer's background more thoroughly. If she returned to your house alone that night, as Thomas claims, her intentions may have been more sinister than financial exploitation. She's always resented me, I said slowly, memories surfacing. From the beginning, she saw me as competition for Thomas's attention, his loyalty. She systematically isolated him from me, from his old friends, even from his career that he loved. Classic controlling behavior, Richard agreed. And when financial pressure increased, that control may have turned more dangerous. When we reached Sarah's house, I was surprised to find a sleek black car parked in the driveway. Expecting visitors? Richard asked, instantly alert. No, I replied, tension returning to my shoulders. Richard parked on the street, positioning himself protectively as we approached the house. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing Sarah and an elegant woman in her mid-60s. Karen, Sarah called, clearly relieved to see us. This is Amanda Wilson, Thomas's former mother-in-law, from his first marriage. I stopped in surprise. Thomas had been briefly married in his 20s to a woman named Rebecca. The marriage had lasted barely a year, ending amicably when they realized they wanted different things in life. I hadn't seen or heard from Rebecca or her family in over 15 years. Mrs. Wilson. Amanda stepped forward, extending her hand. I apologize for arriving unannounced. When I heard what happened to you on the news, I knew I had to come. Please call me Karen, I said automatically, shaking her hand. This is my attorney, Richard Bennett. We moved inside, settling in Sarah's living room. Amanda perched on the edge of the sofa, her posture rigid with what appeared to be nervous energy. I'll be direct, she said after declining offers of refreshment. I believe Jennifer Wilson is dangerous, and I have information that may help your case. Richard leaned forward. What kind of information? Documentation of a similar pattern of behavior with her previous targets. Amanda opened an expensive leather portfolio. Before Jennifer married your son, she was briefly engaged to my nephew, Michael Davis. Their relationship followed a disturbingly similar trajectory to what I understand happened with Thomas. She handed Richard several folders containing financial records, emails, and legal documents. Jennifer systematically isolated Michael from his family, convinced him to leave his job for a better opportunity she arranged, and then began borrowing money for her real estate ventures. Amanda's mouth tightened. When Michael's inheritance from his grandfather wasn't enough to cover her debts, there was a mysterious fire at his parents' vacation home. Jennifer had been pushing them to sell it for months. Was anyone hurt? I asked, a chill running through me. Thankfully, no. The house was empty at the time. Amanda met my gaze directly. But Jennifer had initially suggested a family gathering there that weekend. She canceled it at the last minute, claiming Michael was ill. The implication was clear and terrifying. Did authorities investigate her connection to the fire? Richard asked, examining the documents. Yes, but there wasn't enough evidence to charge her. The relationship ended when Michael finally saw through her manipulation. But by then he'd lost nearly everything. Amanda's expression softened as she turned to me. When I saw the news about your house, about Thomas's arrest, I recognized the pattern immediately. Why come forward now? Richard questioned. It's been years since Jennifer was involved with your nephew. Amanda straightened her already perfect posture. Because I failed to stop her then. Michael was too embarrassed, too ashamed to pursue things further after the investigation stalled. We all wanted to put it behind us. She looked directly at me. But when I saw your face on the news, standing in front of your burned home, I couldn't stay silent this time. After Amanda left, promising to connect Michael with the authorities for a formal statement, Richard immediately called Cooper. I need you to investigate a fire at the Davis family vacation home in Lake Morrison, approximately 6 years ago, he instructed. And dig deeper into Jennifer Wilson's history. Look for any other suspicious fires or insurance claims connected to her or her associates. That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, I sat on her porch watching the last rays of sunlight illuminate the ruins of my home across the street. The scene was both desolate and strangely beautiful, charred beams silhouetted against the sunset sky, fragments of my life exposed to the elements. It's not much to look at now. Richard's voice came from behind me as he stepped onto the porch. But it can be rebuilt. Can it? I wondered aloud. Should it be? Richard settled into the chair beside me. That's entirely your decision, but don't let what happened take away your choices. Karen, that's what Jennifer wanted to remove your agency, your independence. I considered his words. I'm not sure I want to live there again, even if it were rebuilt exactly as it was. Too many memories now, not all of them good. Then build something different, or sell the land and start fresh somewhere else. Richard hesitated. Whatever you decide, you don't have to do it alone. There was a weight to his words that went beyond professional support. I turned to study his face in the fading light, the kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the distinguished silver hair, the lines that spoke of both laughter and concern. Richard, I began, unsure how to phrase what I was feeling. You've gone above and beyond what any attorney would do for a client. You're not just a client, Karen. His voice was gentle but certain. You never have been. Before I could respond, my phone rang Elena Rodriguez. Mrs. Wilson, she began without preamble. I thought you should know immediately. Jennifer has been arrested. On what charges? Attempted murder. The words hung in the air, simultaneously shocking and yet somehow confirming what I'd already suspected. The police found additional security footage. Elena continued. It clearly shows Jennifer returning to your house alone the night of the fire. She was carrying what appears to be containers of accelerant and was recorded at multiple points around your property, including near your bedroom window. My hand tightened around the phone. Near my bedroom. Yes. The fire investigator has confirmed that accelerant was placed on the exterior wall directly beneath your bedroom window. If that portion of the fire had spread as intended, your primary escape route would have been cut off. The calculated nature of it sent ice through my veins. Jennifer hadn't just wanted my house or my money. She had wanted me gone permanently. There's more, Elena added. Based on the new evidence and Thomas's continued cooperation, the DA has offered him a plea deal. 3 years with possibility of parole after 18 months, in exchange for testimony against Jennifer and information about Mendez's operation. Will he take it? He's indicated he will. He wants to make amends, Mrs. Wilson, as much as possible under the circumstances. After hanging up, I relayed the information to Richard, who absorbed it with a grim nod. Not surprising, given what Amanda Wilson shared. Jennifer appears to have escalated from fraud to attempted murder. My son married a woman who tried to kill me, I said, the reality of it still difficult to comprehend. Richard took my hand, his touch warm and steadying. But she failed. You survived, Karen, and now you get to decide what comes next. As night fell fully, we remained on the porch, hands linked, watching the stars appear above the skeleton of my former home. For the first time since the fire, I felt a sense of possibility rather than loss. Jennifer was in custody. Thomas was facing consequences but had chosen truth over continued deception. And I was still here, still standing, with unexpected allies by my side. Whatever came next would be my choice, my life to rebuild, on my terms. The next morning brought another unexpected visitor, Melissa Davis, the real estate agent who had accompanied Jennifer to my house weeks earlier. Mrs. Wilson, she began nervously when Sarah showed her into the living room. I need to speak with you about Jennifer and what happened. I studied her warily. You were part of Jennifer's plan to pressure me into selling my house. Melissa nodded, her perfectly manicured hands twisting in her lap. At first, yes. Jennifer told me you were struggling to maintain the property, that your health was declining. She said the family wanted to help you transition to a more manageable living situation. And you believed her. I did. Or I convinced myself to. Melissa looked down. Jennifer was a major player in our real estate circle. Being associated with her firm meant connections, opportunities. When she asked for my help with her concerned intervention for her mother-in-law, I didn't question it. Until I overheard her on the phone after our visit to your house. She was talking to someone about accelerating the timeline and creating necessary circumstances. It sounded ominous. I exchanged glances with Sarah. Did you confront her? Not directly. I started making excuses to distance myself. But then I heard about the fire and Thomas's arrest. And now Jennifer's. Why come forward now? I asked, echoing Richard's question to Amanda the day before. Melissa straightened. Because the police contacted me yesterday. They found texts from Jennifer to me discussing your property's value and potential buyers already lined up. It looks like I was complicit, but I swear I had no idea she was planning anything criminal. What do you want from me? I asked directly. Nothing. I wanted you to know I'm cooperating fully with the investigation, and I wanted to apologize for my part in this, however unwitting. After Melissa left, promising to provide authorities with any additional information she had, I called Richard to update him. It's another piece of the puzzle, he said thoughtfully. Jennifer was lining up buyers before the fire, confident she'd have your property to sell. That speaks to premeditation. Melissa seemed genuinely shocked by what happened, I noted. Many people were likely pulled into Jennifer's schemes without understanding the full picture. She compartmentalized her deceptions, showing different faces to different people. Later that day, Cooper arrived with a thick folder of documents. Mrs. Wilson, we've uncovered some interesting financial information. Jennifer hasn't just been borrowing from Mendez. She's been moving money between multiple accounts, some in offshore locations. He spread various financial statements across Sarah's dining table. We've traced approximately $850,000 in funds that Jennifer has hidden from Thomas and her creditors. Some appears to be from investors in her real estate developments. Some from bank loans obtained using falsified documentation. Where is this money now? I asked, scanning the complex web of transactions. Most of it is in an account in the Cayman Islands, under a corporate entity called Phoenix Rising Investments. Cooper tapped one document. What's particularly interesting is that she recently booked a one-way ticket to Grand Cayman, scheduled for the day after your house fire. The implication was clear. Jennifer had planned to disappear with the money after I was out of the picture. Did Thomas know about this account? Cooper shook his head. Based on his financial records and statements to investigators. No. Jennifer kept this completely separate from their joint finances. She was planning an exit strategy that didn't include him. She was going to leave him holding the bag, I murmured. Another layer of Jennifer's betrayal becoming clear. After I was gone, and the house was sold, she planned to disappear with the money, leaving Thomas to face the consequences with Mendez and other creditors. It appears so, Cooper confirmed. And with Thomas potentially facing charges for your death, she likely assumed he wouldn't be in a position to pursue her. The calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. Jennifer hadn't just targeted me, she'd planned to discard Thomas once his usefulness ended. We've provided all this information to the authorities, Cooper added. It significantly strengthens the case against her. That evening, Elena called with news that Jennifer's bail had been denied. The judge had cited both the severity of the charges and the evidence of hidden assets and flight risk. She'll remain in custody until trial, Elena explained, which gives us time to build an even stronger case. The DA is also pursuing charges related to the financial fraud, in addition to the attempted murder and arson charges. And Thomas, I couldn't help asking, the plea agreement is being finalized. With the new evidence of Jennifer's hidden accounts, it's clear he wasn't aware of the full scope of her activities. That's working in his favor. After hanging up, I sat in Sarah's kitchen, watching her prepare dinner with practiced efficiency. Our routine had developed naturally over the past days, Sarah cooking, me setting the table, sharing meals and conversation as we had for decades, just in a different house. You're quieter than usual, Sarah observed, sliding a casserole into the oven. I'm thinking about Thomas, I admitted, about how thoroughly Jennifer manipulated him. Sarah settled across from me at the table. Are you reconsidering your feelings about his involvement? Not exactly. He still made choices, terrible choices, but seeing the extent of Jennifer's deception, how she planned to betray him too. I trailed off, sorting through complicated emotions. I think I understand better how he got to that point. Understanding isn't the same as forgiving, Sarah noted gently. No, but maybe it's a start. The next morning, Richard arrived with blueprints and property documents. I thought we might discuss options for your property, he explained. The insurance adjuster has completed his assessment. With the policy coverage and depreciation factors, they're offering $375,000 for the structure, plus $125,000 for contents. That seems fair, I acknowledged, reviewing the figures. Additionally, the land itself has appreciated significantly. A conservative estimate puts its value at $200,000, possibly more given the corner lot location. I looked up from the papers. You've done your homework, Richard smiled slightly. I wanted you to have all the information before making decisions. You have options. Karen, you could rebuild on the same lot, either a replica of your former home or something entirely new. You could sell the land and purchase elsewhere. Or you could invest the money and consider alternatives like a condo or townhouse with less maintenance. What would you do? I asked, curious about his perspective. Richard considered the question seriously. I wouldn't rush the decision. Perhaps rent a place temporarily while you explore options. The important thing is that you make the choice based on what you want for your future, not what you're running from in your past. His wisdom resonated with me. I think you're right. I need time to decide what I really want, now that I'm free to choose. Free to choose. The phrase lingered in my mind throughout the day, for weeks. Jennifer had been trying to remove my choices, to force me into a situation that benefited her financially. Now, with her schemes exposed and her control broken, I had regained not just my safety, but my autonomy. That afternoon, I visited Thomas at the detention center. The meeting room was sparse but clean, with several tables where inmates could visit with family members under the watchful eyes of corrections officers. Thomas looked better than he had at the hospital, less panicked, though still subdued. He brightened visibly when he saw me. "Mom, you came." "I said I would," I reminded him, taking a seat across the table. "I know, but after everything," he shook his head, "I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again. You're still my son, Thomas. That hasn't changed, even if everything else has." He swallowed hard. "I've accepted the plea deal. 3 years, with possible parole after 18 months. Elena told me, I think it's the right decision. It's more than I deserve," he said quietly. "But I want to make things right, as much as I can. I'm cooperating fully about Jennifer, about Mendez. Everything." "I know you are." Thomas leaned forward slightly. "Mom, there's something else you should know. Something I only realized after Jennifer's arrest. The house fire wasn't her first attempt," I stilled. "What do you mean? Remember when your car brakes failed 2 months ago? The mechanic said it was wear and tear, but Jennifer had borrowed your car the week before. She made a specific point of offering to take it for an oil change." The memory surfaced Jennifer's uncharacteristic offer to help with my car maintenance. The terrifying moment when my brakes failed while approaching an intersection. I'd been fortunate to pump them enough to slow down and steer into an empty parking lot. "You think she tampered with my brakes?" The idea was chilling. Thomas nodded miserably. "And the loose railing on your back porch steps, Jennifer volunteered to fix it, but she must have loosened it more instead. If you hadn't noticed it wobbling before putting your weight on it." Each revelation painted a more sinister picture of Jennifer's intentions. She hadn't just opportunistically decided to burn my house, she'd been making multiple attempts to harm me, disguised as accidents. "Have you told the police this?" I asked. "Yes, they're re-examining both incidents." As our visiting time drew to a close, Thomas reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask, but will you write to me while I'm here?" The request was small, almost childlike in its vulnerability. Despite everything, I found myself nodding. "I will, and I'll visit when I can." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you. I'll make this right, Mom. Somehow, someday, I'll make it right." As I left the detention center, Richard was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car with casual elegance. The sight of him solid, dependable, present brought unexpected comfort. "How did it go?" he asked as I approached. "Better than I expected." Thomas shared some disturbing information about previous incidents that might have been Jennifer's attempts to harm me. Richard's expression darkened. "She's been planning this for some time." Then, "It appears so." We drove in companionable silence for a while, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road. "Richard," I said eventually, "I've been thinking about your advice, about taking time to decide what I want for my future. And I think I'd like to rent a small apartment for a few months, something simple but comfortable. While I consider my options," he nodded approvingly. "I think that's wise. In fact, I know of a furnished garden apartment in my neighborhood that just became available. 1 bedroom, private entrance, quiet street." "Your neighborhood," I repeated, a smile tugging at my lips. "How convenient." Richard's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Entirely coincidental, I assure you, though I wouldn't object to having you as a neighbor." For the first time in weeks, I felt a lightness in my chest, a sense of possibility rather than dread. "I think I'd like that." The apartment Richard mentioned proved to be charming, a garden-level unit in a converted Victorian home, with large windows overlooking a meticulously maintained backyard. The rent was reasonable, the lease flexible, and I could move in immediately. Sarah helped me shop for essentials to supplement the basic furnishings. It felt strange to buy new clothes, toiletries, kitchen items, all the daily necessities I'd accumulated over decades, now reduced to ash. "It's like starting from scratch," I commented as we filled a shopping cart with towels and bedding. Not entirely from scratch, Sarah corrected. You still have your history, your memories, your relationships. Those weren't destroyed in the fire. She was right, of course. The house and its contents could be replaced. What mattered most, my sense of self, my connections to others, remained intact, perhaps even strengthened by the ordeal. The day I moved into the apartment, Richard appeared at my door with a housewarming gift, a small potted magnolia tree. "It won't bloom for a while," he said, placing it carefully on my new patio table. "But when it does, I thought it might remind you of home." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched me deeply. "Thank you. It's perfect." As we sat on the patio with glasses of iced tea, Richard updated me on the legal proceedings. Jennifer's attorney has approached the DA about a plea deal, but they're not inclined to offer one given the severity of the charges and the evidence against her. "Good," I said firmly. "She should face full consequences for what she did." "The trial will likely be difficult," Richard warned. "Her defense will try to shift as much blame as possible to Thomas, paint her as an unwitting spouse. With the financial evidence, Cooper found the hidden accounts, the one-way ticket. Even with that, these cases can be unpredictable. Are you prepared to testify if needed?" I considered the question seriously. The thought of facing Jennifer across a courtroom was intimidating, but the alternative, allowing her to escape justice, was unacceptable. "Yes," I decided. "I'll testify. I want her to see me, alive and well despite her best efforts. I want her to know she failed." Richard reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "You're an extraordinary woman, Karen Wilson." The warmth in his eyes stirred something I hadn't felt in years, a flutter of attraction, of possibility. James had been gone 3 years now. I'd assumed that chapter of my life was closed, that companionship and romantic